Story 1. This incident occurred when I was 10 years old at my local Chucky Cheese's. My mom had promised to take me because I had achieved all A's on my report card. Every time I accomplished this, I would receive a prize or some type of outing. Chucky Cheese's had been our go-to spot, and every kid knew it was the place to hang out. At the time, my family and I were tight on money. Despite this, my mom agreed to take me, but she set a limit of $50. Though it was a challenging situation, I didn't care about the money. I just wanted to have fun. I recall my mom sitting at one of the booths, waiting for our pizza, and giving me tokens to play some games. I gravitated towards skee ball, a classic and enjoyable game. As I played, one of the balls fell on the floor. When I looked up, I saw a man standing in front of me. He wore a white shirt, black pants, and an obviously fake Rolex on his wrist. Initially, he seemed like a dad. He introduced himself as Robert and asked if I was alone. When I informed him I wasn't, he insisted that he enjoyed skee ball as well and wondered if he could join me. I gave him a friendly smile, hinting that I didn't want to talk to him. Taking stranger danger seriously, I resisted his suggestion. He mentioned that his son enjoyed the game too and suggested we go play with him. He grabbed my hand, attempting to nudge me to follow him. My gut told me not to go, no matter how innocent he might have seemed. Despite his attempts to tug me, I kept resisting, making it clear that I didn't want to go with him. This drew the attention of onlookers, and people started yelling for him to let me go. Bystanders multiplied, creating a scene. Staff and police rushed over, causing the man to finally let go. He tried to run towards the exit doors, but was caught by the police. He resisted arrest and ended up getting tased. His scream was etched into my mom took me away, speaking to the police and the head manager. It turned out this wasn't the first time he had done something like this. He had targeted several other kids and even managed to abduct a few. Fortunately, the abducted kids were found safe. Chuck E. Cheese's apologized for the situation, offering a full refund, but my mom wasn't interested. She shielded me as we left the building, becoming extra cautious for the next few years until I could learn to fend for myself. Needless to say, we never returned to that Chuck E. Cheese's again. This incident highlights how Chuck E. Cheese's isn't always a safe place for a kid to be a kid. On a different note, I've worked at Chuck E. Cheese's for almost 4 years now as a standard cast member. Story 2. Working at Chuck E. Cheese was generally a fun job, except for the occasional chaos during birthday parties and the varying management each week. We had different managers, some good, some bad, so your experience really depended on who was in charge. Other than that, it was reasonably manageable. Over the 4 years, I encountered many different kids and witnessed things you wouldn't see anywhere else. However, one experience stood out. Some staff members were let go for reasons I won't delve into, leaving us with a skeleton staff. This meant we barely had enough employees to fully operate the center. Although it was short-staffed, it happened to be a relatively slow day, which reduced some stress. Around closing time, we had to clean everything within an hour. At that time, COVID-19 precautions were still common, so sanitizing everything in the store, including gates, tables, counters, and even parts of the animatronics, was mandatory. After sanitizing and sweeping, I headed into the back room where all the animatronics were. Approaching the room, I noticed the door was slightly open. I assumed she went in for something and forgot to lock. As I walked inside, I saw that the animatronics seemed tampered with. Thinking my manager misplaced them, I began wiping them down while listening to my music. While cleaning inside Chucky's head, I looked to my right and saw a man sitting, giving me a dead stare. Panicking, I frantically called for my manager, screaming that there's someone in the back room. The man slowly got up and forcefully covered my mouth. At 5'7" and 140 lbs, I couldn't escape his grasp. He leaned in and threatened to kill me if I didn't stop. Terrified, I tried to calm down, not knowing what he would do next. My manager and the outside security guard entered the room. The security guard drew his gun, commanding the man let me go. He complied, and I ran into the manager's arms. The security guard escorted me out. make matters worse, he had a large knife in his back pocket. That night, I quit and swore never to return. My manager understood, but I still have lingering questions about the incident. How did nobody see him get a key? What were his intentions? What would he have done if the security guard hadn't been there? It still gives me goosebumps till this day. My name is Ron, and I've been in... Story 3. I've been working as an electrician for over 30 years now. My job involves fixing electrical issues in various establishments, from schools to malls. It's generally a relaxed job if you know what you're doing, and I've enjoyed it throughout the years. I've never had any abnormal encounters, until one evening changed everything. Our company received a call from a Chucky cheese reporting issues with a few lights. I was scheduled to go in and fix them, which should have been a straightforward task since lights were my specialty. I arrived at the Chucky cheese, which was closed for a staff-only meeting. After inspecting the lights, I went into the ceiling to figure out if something up there was causing the issue. Being a big guy in small spaces was uncomfortable, especially in a hurry. About a minute into this feeling, I heard what sounded like footsteps across the ceiling. I shone my light into the dark, empty ceiling, finding nothing. Initially, I thought it might be some kind of animal, considering the nearby wildlife reserve housing unwanted critters. There I was, trying to repair the issue when I distinctly heard the laughter of a small child echoing through the dark. The only problem was, I couldn't see anyone or anything with my flashlight. There seemed to be nobody inside the ceiling but me. I repaired the lights, packed up my equipment, and hurriedly left. On my way out, I tried my best to forget what I heard and focus on what's next. I didn't mention anything to the staff or anyone at work, thinking they'd see me as crazy. But then again, who could blame them? To this day, I'm still unsure of exactly what I heard, but fear doesn't quite capture what I felt. Honestly, I don't know how to describe it. It was a mix of fear, confusion, and panic. I didn't talk about this with many people, but I did share it with my friend, who claimed it was all in my head. However, I was certain it was something more. Story 4. When I was a kid, I went to Chuck E. Cheese several times. It was popular for birthday parties, and I always loved it. Every part of it was cool. However, everything changed when I was about 8 years old. I was invited to my friend Ben's birthday party at the local Chuck E. Cheese. We weren't great friends, but he invited many people. The party was on a Saturday, and my neighborhood was close by. In fact, I could walk there in under 10 minutes. My parents allowed me to walk because our neighborhood felt safe. I don't recall any crime or feeling scared at that time. I got to Chuck E. Cheese and was among the first kids there. After playing arcade games, eating pizza, and having a good time, the party lasted for 2 or 3 hours. When people started leaving, I decided to walk home. I told Ben's parents, who offered a ride, but I declined. I assured them I lived close, and they informed my parents. I walked home, feeling older than I was. It was a regular Saturday, and everything seemed fine. I reached home without noticing anything unusual. Later that night, in my one-story house, I went to bed. Things took a creepy turn when, in the middle of the night, I woke up groggy. Wondering about the time, I sat up and saw a large Chuck E. Cheese mouse mask outside my window. Someone was wearing it, staring into my room. I felt scared, shocked, and couldn't believe it. I moved back, ran to my brother's room, and stood there, not knowing what to do. Eventually, I went to the living room and turned on the TV. I didn't want to wake anyone, but couldn't go back to my room. I didn't see the person again that night, and I eventually fell asleep on the couch. When my family woke up, I explained the bizarre incident. They were confused, but believed me. We went outside and found Chucky, cheese and tickets on the grass below me. I never saw the person again, and I wonder if it was someone from Chuck E. Cheese following me home. Even though I didn't notice anything unusual, I'm left with many questions about that night. Story 5. When I was a kid, one of my school classes won a field trip to Chuck E. Cheese. I don't recall how or why we won, but we were all very excited. I had been to Chuck E. Cheese once before when I was about 10 years old. On the day of the trip, we gathered in the classroom and then walked out to the bus. Leaving school during a school day to go to Chuck E. Cheese felt great. The bus ride took about 10 minutes, and we arrived at a Chuck E. Cheese located near a strip mall in our city's shopping area. It wasn't very busy, being a weekday during the daytime, and there were about 20 or 30 of us kids in total. We received tokens to play games, and there were pizzas for us as well. We all started running around, playing arcade games, and having a blast. It was turning out to be one of the best school days of my life up to that point. About 30 minutes in, I was looking for a new game to play, and wandered off to a quiet corner by myself. There weren't many games in that area, and I was alone. As I passed some car racing game machines, I noticed a grown man crouched down like he was hiding. He was hard to see, but I saw him. I walked closer to examine, and when I was about 50 feet away, he turned and looked at me. He smiled and gestured to me quietly, as if playing hide and seek with a kid. It seemed weird, but I didn't think much of it. I nodded and left him alone, continuing to decide which game to play next. After not finding anything in that corner, I started moving back to other games. Not far from that area, I found a game and started playing. After about 5 minutes, I looked over to the quiet corner I'd been at before and saw the man again. Now he was standing with a girl who wasn't from my class and appeared younger than me. At first, I thought she was his daughter, but they were heading towards the emergency exit. The guy looked suspicious, and I decided to walk over. I didn't have a plan. I just followed my instincts. When he saw me, he let go of the girl's hand, walked towards the exit, and left. The girl remained inside, standing there. To make matters worse, he was also found with a large knife in his back pocket. It was that night where I quit right then and swore never to return, and my manager politely understood. However, I still have several remaining questions as to what had happened. How did nobody see him get a key? What were his intentions? And what would he have done had the security not been there? It still gives me goosebumps till this day. My name is Ron, and I've been in. Almost 10 years ago, it was 2015, and at the time, I was a divorced mother of a 10-year-old boy. I enjoyed spending time with my son, and we would do fun things together all the time. One night, I took him to Chuck E. Cheese. It was fairly busy, and there were a lot of other people there. My son always loved going there, and I would usually just sit at a table as he played the games. He was old enough that I didn't need to always keep an eye on him. So, on this particular night, I was pretty much by myself at one of the tables. My son was in the arcade somewhere, and nobody was sitting immediately near me. At one point, though, a man came up and sat at my table. I didn't see where he had come from. I just noticed when he sat down and looked up to see him there. He looked to be around my age, roughly late 30s, and had really short blonde hair. I was a little bit confused about why he was sitting at my table, and I looked up at him. That's when he stated that his kid loved Chuck E. Cheese. I said that mine did too, and we talked briefly about our kids. I don't remember much of what he said because I was still confused as to why he had come up to me in the first place. He must have sensed my confusion because he then stuck out his hand for me to shake and introduced himself as Dave. I gave my name to him, and then he said that he better get going. He got up and walked away, disappearing back into the arcade and out of my sight. The whole encounter was a little bit strange. I stayed where I was for probably another 30 minutes or so. I didn't see Dave at all for the rest of the night. After my son had used up all of his tokens, he came over, got some of his tickets, and then we left. It was the next day when I was on Facebook and saw that I had a friend request from a guy named Dave. At first, I didn't know who he was, so I clicked on his profile. I then realized that it was the same man who had talked to me at Chuck E. Cheese the previous night. This was kind of weird because I had only given him my first name, and I wasn't really sure how he found me. We didn't have any mutual friends or anything, and there wasn't a lot on his profile in terms of information or pictures. I don't really know why, but I accepted his friend request. Unless it was obviously a robot or something, I would kind of automatically accept everyone. But that proved to be a mistake, as only about an hour later, he started sending me messages. He started out by saying hi and asking what I was doing. I wasn't interested in talking to him, to be honest, and I didn't respond. He kept sending me messages, though. By the next day, there were about 10 more unread messages from him. I finally decided to respond and asked him why he was sending me so many messages. He replied, saying it was because I wasn't responding. Then he asked me if I wanted to hang out with him, and I told him no thanks. That's when his mood started to change. He started cursing me out and calling me things that I won't repeat here. I told him that if he didn't stop messaging me, I was going to block him. That's when he said something that made me angry. He said something like, "Go ahead, I know what you mean." It gave me chills to read it because based on his behavior, I thought that maybe he did somehow know. He then said that he didn't even have a kid. I blocked him and reported his account for harassment. For a few days, I didn't hear from Dave, but then one night he came to my house. Luckily, my son wasn't home at the time and was at a friend's house. It was probably about 8 or 9 p.m., and I would be leaving to pick up my son soon. There was a knock on my front door, and I knew instantly, based on how late it was, that it was probably Dave. My heart was racing as I walked over to look out one of the front windows. He knocked on the door again as I saw him standing there. I wasn't going to answer it, but soon he started yelling. I heard him say that he knew I was home and to open up the door. I was thinking that this guy had to have been crazy or something. He started looking around at the windows and I quickly moved away. I knew that this was grounds to call the police, and I got my phone from the counter and dialed 911. As I was talking to the operator, Dave started yelling something else, but I wasn't paying attention to him. I was told that a police officer was waiting for me. I figured they would be there. Meanwhile, Dave kept knocking on the door. He was clearly angry now, and I heard him yell at me that if I didn't open the door for him, he was going to break in. That's when the relief that I felt went away, and I was just as worried as I had ever been. I still didn't bother to say anything back to Dave, though. Instead, I moved into my hallway and entered the bathroom. Then I closed the door and locked it, hoping that Dave wouldn't actually try to break in. The bathroom had a small window that faced our backyard. At first, when I was in there, things were quiet. Now that I was farther away from Dave, I could barely hear the knocking. But then, the knocking stopped probably about 2 minutes later. I then heard noises coming from the backyard. It sounded like Dave was possibly banging on the kitchen window. This only lasted for a few seconds, though, and then it stopped. I didn't hear anything for a few minutes after that. The next thing I knew, I got a call from the police saying that they were there. I left my bathroom and saw several officers outside of my house with flashing lights. They had actually caught Dave, and I was told that he had been hiding in my backyard. I pressed charges against him for harassment and later got a restraining order. I'm happy to say that I've never seen him since. Story 7. Then, the first and only time I ever went to Chuck E. Cheese was back in the year 2005. I was a little kid at the time, and I remember that my older brother got invited to one of his friends' birthday parties, which was going to be at Chuck E. Cheese. My parents were invited as well, so they said that I could come with. I was excited to go there because I had always wanted to. It seemed like so much fun with the arcade games, the pizza, and everything. I remember that the party was on a Sunday, I think. When we got there, my parents got a pizza, and my brother went to hang out with his friends. I knew some of the kids that were there, but they were mostly my brother's friends, so I could kind of do my own thing. My brother's friend, who the party was for, was named Tyler. His parents got a bunch of tokens for everyone. They gave me a little paper cup with a bunch of tokens in it, and I began going around playing some of the machines. I was trying to find the best machines that would have the best payout of tickets. I saw that Chuck E. Cheese had some pretty cool prizes you could win with the tickets. After playing maybe half the arcade games they had in there, I found this one in the corner that I really liked a lot. I was getting on a winning streak, and after the second time playing it, I had quite a few tickets. I played it for a third time, and I was right in the middle of the game when all of a sudden, the whole thing suddenly went black and froze. It was really strange. I pushed some of the buttons and messed around with it a little bit, but nothing worked. The screen was completely black, and nothing I did seemed to affect it. I was a little kid, so I didn't really know how the machines worked. I just figured it would work. Then, I saw a man appear next to the machine. He was wearing a shirt with the Chuck E. Cheese logo and asked me what had happened. I told him the machine was broken, and he took a look at it and saw it wasn't working. He pushed a few of the buttons and then went around to the back of the machine. It seemed like he was working on it. A short time later, he returned guy started to walk away and told me to follow him. We went off to the side of the room and then into a hallway, which led to the back. I stopped at the entrance of the hallway that said, "Employees only," but then I was told to keep going. I followed the guy down the hall, and then we reached a side door. The guy then backed up and grabbed my arm tightly. He opened the door, which turned out to be an exit of the building. I could see outside, and he pulled my arm and forced me to follow him. I asked the man what was going on, but he didn't answer me. I was starting to panic. The guy had a strong grip on my arm, and it looked like we were going out to his car. I really didn't want to go any further, and I was desperate. As we got closer, I suddenly took my leg and kicked the man right in the groin area. It really took him by surprise, and he dropped to his knees for a second, and his grip became much looser. I pulled away from the man and started running back, but I decided to go around to the front of Chucky Cheese. Once I had made it around to the front, I went to the entrance doors and ran back inside to my parents. When I got there, they saw me and asked me what was wrong. After I told them what happened, they decided to call the police and talk with the managers as well. I remember I had to talk with the